When we look at the 12 zodiac signs, we see very simple, clear, symmetrical, organized patterns that make each sign represent the things that it represents. The simplest and most fundamental of all these patterns is the planetary ruler system. The symbolism of the planet that rules the zodiac sign is extremely important in determining what the sign itself symbolizes. And the ruler of the sign becomes the lord of the house that the sign creates, and therefore is very, very instrumental in the backbone of all classical chart interpretation systems. Today, and arguably for many, many centuries, zodiacal astrology is the type of astrology that we've all been initially exposed to and that we're the most familiar with. We're used to the astrology of 12 signs and 12 houses. When people like us broaden our horizons and expose ourselves to more ancient or deeper aspects of astrology, like the nakshatras, we naturally look for similar patterns and systems that we're familiar with from using the zodiac. For example, we expect that nakshatras should have planetary lords like the signs do. And we expect to be able to use those lords similarly to how we use them in zodiacal astrology. The truth is that nakshatras are quite different from zodiac signs in one very important way. Unlike signs, nakshatras are based on visible things, the stars. So while zodiac signs have these rich symbolic patterns and symmetries defining what they are and what they represent, with nakshatras it's actually much more straightforward. The symbolism of any nakshatra is rooted in what its founding star, which is called Yogatara, looks like. Things about the star, like its position, its color, its size, its relationship to other stars, and so on, gives a personality to that star, gives a character to that star, which causes a particular Vedic god or goddess to have an affinity for that particular star. And then the god or goddess dwells in that star and imparts unto it the characteristics that he or she possesses. Well, then why do people think that nakshatras have planetary lords? The short answer is because nakshatra are correlated to planets in Dasha systems. Now, to explain that short answer, I'll give you a long answer. All astrological systems have some means of making time-based predictions. The most fundamental of these systems in Indian astrology is called Dasha. Dasha is a word that simply means era or time period or phase. Each particular Dasha technique has two components, a schedule and a correlation. A schedule of how long a dasha will last, and a correlation of a nakshatra to a planet. Indian astrology has many dasha systems. The most ubiquitous by far of all the dasha systems is the Vimshottari system. This name Vimshottari is super simple. It just literally means 120. And it's named that way because the schedule is based on 120 years. So this system has a particular correlation of nakshatras to planets, and you'll be familiar with it if you're familiar with nakshatras at all. It says Sun correlates to Kritika, Moon correlates to Rohini, Mars to Mrigashirsha, Rahu to Ardra, Jupiter to Punarvasu, Saturn to Pushya, Mercury, Aslesha, Ketu, Magha, Venus, Purva Palguni, and then just repeat that order. So for example, when the schedule for Vimshottari Dasha activates Kritika, then the sun is active. You look in the person's chart and see what's up with their sun, and that's the kind of things that will come to pass during the time that Kritika is active. Now, when we come to look and learn about nakshatras from our background with zodiacal astrology, we really like this. When we hear that the sun is related to Kritika and the moon Rohini, we think, wow, that's a lot like the sun is related to Leo and the moon is related to Cancer and Mars is related to Aries. So we expect it to be very similar, but the truth is that it's not. With zodiac signs, there's one and only one correlation between planets and signs. Sun rules Leo. Nobody ever in the history of the universe has ever said that the sun doesn't rule Leo and it rules something else. Sun rules Leo, moon rules Cancer, Mars rules Aries, and there's no second system. This is completely not the case with nakshatras. There are dozens of different correlations between planets and nakshatras. to illustrate this briefly, I'll just use Rohini and Mrigashirsha. In the 120-year system, Rohini is Moon and Mrigashirsha is Mars. And so people will think, well, look, Moon rules Rohini and Mars rules Mrigashirsha. But in the 108-year system, Rohini is Venus and Mrigashirsha is also Venus. And in this system, there is no such thing as Ketu. In a 106-year system, Rohini is associated to Mars and Mrigashirsha is associated to Jupiter, completely different planets. A 112-year system, Rohini is associated to Jupiter and Mrigashirsha now is associated to Ketu. In a 105-year system, Rohini belongs to Mercury and Mrigashirsha to Saturn. What this shows, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that there's no single planet to nakshatra correlation. This, in turn, completely destroys the argument that the way planets are related to nakshatras is somehow similar to the way planets are related to zodiac signs. People will say, yeah, there's many different correlations between planets and zodiac signs, but since Vimshottari Dasha is the most ubiquitous Dasha, then the correlation that it establishes is the one that we should accept. Which planet rules which nakshatra should be based on the way Vimshottari has it set up. Well, okay, but actually, why? Like, what is the compelling reason to do that? It's only a need for familiarity in dealing with the nakshatras and a feeling that I wish that these nakshatras had planetary rulers, just like the zodiac signs that I'm used to, that you would reach for one out of a dozen and say we should use this one. People will also argue, hey Vic, you're just a bunch of theory. That's all you ever talk about is theory. We use the planetary rulers of the nakshatras and it works, and it's worked for ages or generations, and why don't you just shut up? So my response here is, anything will work if you just believe. If you believe in something enough, then you'll be willing enough to ignore or not even notice the things about it that don't work, or the things about it that don't make sense, or the cases where it fails you. So I'll just close with 4 quick Q&As. Aren't the various dasha correlations between planet and nakshatra interesting though? Yes, they're super interesting. Then might they reveal something about the character of the nakshatra? Yes, I think they reveal very interesting nuances about the nakshatras, but not the fundamental nature of the nakshatra. Are the planetary rulers important for chart interpretation? Yes, they're important for interpreting the dashas. Are the planetary associations of nakshatras somehow similar at all to the relationship between a zodiac sign and its planetary ruler? No.